All right, we're going to work on project 2.3. This is for CIS 2620, module 2. This is configuring utilities. A lot of the labs in chapter 2 are just kind of exploratory, have you look at things, and I think this is one of those labs. We're going to look at a couple things, maybe a couple of minor edits, things like that, but nothing major. We're not going to change anything major. But the lab is at this point in the course, right? Early on, we just installed everything last chapter. Now we want to explore the different utilities that we have available to us to configure Windows Server. We're working with Windows Server 2019, and on the right-hand side, you can see my server manager. This is on my SVR1. This is on our vSphere. This is my primary server. The lab, if I'm not mistaken, asked you to do this on all three GUIs, right? So there's a couple places where you're going to make a couple minor changes. Make sure you do that on all three of your graphical user interface servers. So server 1, server 3, and HPV. And other than that, we should get going. So number 1, right? We're gonna on our host here. We're gonna click start, click control panel. I'm gonna right mouse click on start and click. Oh, we don't have control panel here. Control panel's here. All right, so here's control panel, and we want to go to system and security here on the top, and system advanced system settings. I never can find any of these things whenever they do this to us. so, system and security, advanced system settings. I would assume here, right, in system. It's like they skipped a step. Advanced system settings. Was it over here on the side? It was not on the side, right? So I think the instructions say system and security. Oh, system. I did miss it right there. They had it. System and security, advanced system. I saw system advanced. I mean, I guess I put them together. All right, under the performance section, click settings. Here's performance. We're going to click on settings. Highlight the advanced tab. Here's the advanced tab. And note the default setting for the processor scheduling, right? So processor scheduling, background service. Okay, adjust performance. Okay, we can change it over to where programs are take precedence. Right now, background services take precedence, and right down here, I think there's something about virtual memory here in a minute. But our virtual memory page is 1408 down at the bottom here. Click change and note the default size of the page. Oh, this one. Click advanced tab. Note that. Click change. So we're going to have a click change here on the virtual memory. And note that the default size of the paging file is currently allocated to your system, right? So when I kind of looked at that a minute ago, right? Currently allocated 1408. Okay. And for the most part, right? For the most part, in my career, right? So the last 20 plus years, almost 30 years at this point, right? Most of the time we just leave Windows dealing with virtual memory, right? Unless you have a specific issue that you need to address, and multiple guides, or like your application, the company that created your application that you like, if you're using a custom application, that's usually the time where we had to mess with virtual memory type stuff, is when we had custom applications built for the companies that we were supporting. Most of the time, though, you're going to keep automatically managing page files. You're going to let Windows do that automatically. So if you're not familiar with what a page file is memory on a hard drive, right? So we're using the C drive, and we're going to allocate, looks like 1.4 gigabytes of space on the hard drive to act as a page file location. So what that means is, as we open and close programs on our computer, right, maybe when we run programs and we're doing things, maybe we run out of RAM, like the actual RAM in the machine. And if that happens, instead of the system locking up and messing, and freezing, it will take the older items, the items that we haven't used in a while, right, or that are sitting there, they're running in memory, but they're not being used currently, and it will write those to the hard drive. And then if we happen to go need that piece of data, then it will swap, right? It will swap out current items in RAM that are not being used currently with the data that we want off the hard drive, right? So it's going to be massively slower than if you have more RAM in your machine, but this is a way for us to manage, hitting the top end of our RAM available to us on the computer. So we're going to use this virtual memory as a paging file, right? So we're going to take a page of information off of RAM and we're going to put it onto a hard drive, and then we'll move pages of memory off of the hard drive and put it back into RAM so we can use it. Okay, I think this wants to close this. Not a big deal. We didn't make any changes. I'm not going to restart my machine because we didn't do anything. Highlight data execution prevention. So right up here, data execution prevention. Right, helps protect against damage from viruses and other threats. And note the default setting. Turn on DEP for all programs and services except those I select. So you can add programs here that DEP won't interfere with. Again, I would not do that unless you are troubleshooting a problem, right? And their instructions or guidance that tell you to put something here in order to avoid maybe some interference here by data execution prevention. Okay, other than that, we're just going to click OK. Not a big deal. Under the startup and recovery section, so I guess they want us to, right here, startup and recovery. We're going to click on settings. And note the default options and locations of the dump file. Okay, so the default options right here, so automatically restart. And so if system failure, we're going to automatically restart. And we're going to set up an automatic memory dump. So anything that was in memory on a system failure will be written to this memory.dmp. And in my course of my career, we've had probably, I would say probably a dozen times where we've used the dump file to send off to, say, Microsoft or an elevated support service that's helping us try to troubleshoot what actually happened, where they needed to look at that file and try to figure out the issues. Me, myself, I've never ever needed to dig into the memory dump file. Either I didn't need to, or I didn't realize I needed it. I could have used it, but I've never used it. Personally, I know though over time that we have sent it off to custom. And again, I say custom, but like when you have companies that had spent $100,000 on a point of sale system, and that's how their business runs, right? When you're dealing with the developers, they want to see these dump files to see what happened to make sure that they solve any problems. But that's automatically under system root, right? So system root on the unit, and I think we actually will go find that in a little while. The system root here should be, like C:\Windows. So if there was a memory dump, right, it should be located under here somewhere, right? So and I don't think I've had one, right? So there shouldn't be one here, but right. So if you have one, it should kind of show up right in that space there. All right, and we'll verify what system root is, right? This is a variable, this percentage system root variable, and you'll start to see that as we start to use PowerShell in the rest of the chapter, that you can insert these variables instead of having to hard code. This is on the C drive in Windows, right? Because if that moves, then anything written with C:\Windows no longer functions. Okay, so just be aware of that. That's where we use these variables here. Okay, let's see. So click settings, start recovery, finish, close that. Okay, so click OK. And then on the bottom of the system properties window, click environmental variables. Down here, environmental variables. So here's our path. Oh, here we go. Maybe should have been a system path variable down here. I'm not seeing it. The one that's specifically called system. Here's Windows directory right here. So windir, we can use that as a variable. Let's check it out. Let's see what else is going on. So at the bottom of the system property environment variables, in the user variable and for administrator section, click new. So up here, user variables for administrator, we're going to click new. We're going to add a variable, just going to call it var1, and for the variable value, sample variable. Okay. So just an example that you can create variables and that you can then call those variables later on. Most of the time, like down in the system variables, they're going to be pointing to a folder or a file or a location for us to use to access information. Okay, that was number 4. Click that in the system variable section. Note the values of path, temp, and windir variables. Okay, so we kind of looked at that. Here's path. If we double click on path, it should show us all the path. And since it wants us to notate that, maybe for later, I'm going to use snipping tool. I'm going to grab that picture and save it to my desktop real quick. All right. And then I believe, what was the other two that it wanted us to look at? Temp. So here's temp, see Windows temp, TMP, same place, and then windir, see Windows. Awesome. This one's pretty easy to remember, so I'm not going to worry about it. All right, number 5. Let's say, does that click OK? Click OK. All right, we're going to close that up. In the Systems Property window, highlight the Hardware tab. Hardware tab. And click on Device Manager. So this is another way to get to Device Manager. You could also probably right mouse click, get to Device Manager there. You could probably also just click on Start here and type in Device Manager and get to that. It's also in the control panel. Okay, so lots of ways to get there. Typical of Microsoft to do something like that. Like this is 4 ways that I just showed you how to get to Device Manager. Lately, because of the search function in Windows, I normally just click on Start, type in what I'm looking for, and it 9 times out of 10 is going to show up for me. Okay, so in Device Manager, if there was anything that needed attention, right? So if I had plugged in something and it needed some help, right? Then it would have a little yellow icon. It would be expanded, and there'd be a little yellow icon here. If there's something like that, or if there's like an unknown device, it will automatically open up, and you'll see it. It doesn't hide those things from you. If you needed to, say, update a driver, so like this is my driver, I can right mouse click and update the driver. I could also go to Properties, and I could go to Driver, and I can roll back the driver if I had actually installed an update and something wasn't going right. I could roll back. I haven't done any of that kind of stuff on this machine. We're also running on a virtual machine, so most of the drivers are going to be fine on our virtual machines. But in a normal server, right, you're going to be looking for. I'm curious. I'm going to go to my machine real fast. Maybe I won't. It's like it's hiding behind these screens. It won't let me type in. That's interesting. It won't let me do that. So if I move both of those over, I get literally is not my machine. It's not letting me. That's weird. Let's go to Device Manager here, see if it'll let me get there. So here's the Device Manager on my machine. So I'm not seeing any. I was curious if I had any kind of weirdness going on, right? And I don't. As you can see, I got all kinds of things that I could have issues with. So every once in a while you may want to kind of go through this, look for updates, system updates. I have some utilities on my machine that'll actually look for updates to firmware and updates to drivers and things. But just be aware of that, right? So in number 5, right, so we could right mouse click update the driver. We could right mouse click and and roll back the driver. If we wanted to, we could disable the device. They want us to expand disk drives. Here's disk drives. We're using a virtual IDE, right? They want us to go to properties. Under properties, go into policies. Enable write cache on this device. The write caching is enabled on the device by default, but not flushing is not. So enable write cache. It improves the system performance by enabling write cache on the device, but power outage of equipment failure might result in data loss or corruption. And then turn off Windows write cache buffer flushing on the device. So to prevent data loss, do not select this checkbox unless the device has separate power supply that allows the device to flush its buffer. Okay. So by default on a hard drive, right, on a regular hardware system, I wonder, so they say that. Let's take a look at that on my machine. So, and I think because we're working on virtual here, and I wanted to really kind of look at, you know, is it different? Right. So here's properties, policies, and it is like that's by default. Okay. So I run a pair of 512s. I run them in a RAID 1 configuration. Additionally, then I have an online backup solution that backs up my data. As things change, it backs up online. And then we have, so I run that on my machine, and then I have a 4 terabyte NAS unit on my network that I store my data on. Anyways, just to kind of get a sense of this, right? So they're looking for this to be checked, and if you don't see it checked, let's leave it as is. We're not trying to make any changes. I just want us to kind of poke around and see what things look like. Okay, we're going to click Device Manager or close Device Manager, and we're going to restart later because we haven't really changed anything. All right, number 6, in the Control Panel window, click Control Panel. So if we close, let's close System Properties, and let's go back to Control Panel Home. Click Control Panel in the navigation bar to switch back to the category view. Okay, so we're back in the category view. Next, click Add a Device. We're not in category view. We are in category view. Add a device here under Hardware. It's looking to see if there's anything connected. So, and this is connected to anything that's plug and play, right? So anything that, if you plug in a hard drive, that should be recognized. If you plug in a network card, that should be recognized. Most devices nowadays are plug and play, meaning you plug them in and the system will recognize them. Printers, I don't know if you've gotten a printer lately, but most of the time with the printers that I get, I usually have to go download installation utilities or drivers ahead of time so that when I plug it in, it recognizes that. So I think the more advanced devices, I would say printers, probably like dedicated scanners, things like that, are going to need other device, device drivers ahead of time. So the plug and play, yeah, it recognizes it, but if you don't have the right software, then it doesn't recognize it quite right. We're not going. There's no devices for us to install, so we're not going to be worried about that. I don't think. I'm going to go back to my personal machine. I don't think my machine. And my machine's not giving me the link to the control panel there, so it's kind of weird. So we'll skip that part. But right, again, just kind of poking around, not really doing a whole lot here. Navigate to the system and security power options. Oh, and did I close down? Close down control panel. All right, so then system security, and then power. Select high performance. I have a balance plan. Okay. If you click on show additional plans, there's power saver plan. There's a high performance plan. Okay. Favors performance but may use more energy. Okay. Select high performance. Change plan settings. Change advanced power settings. Change plan settings here, and then change advanced power settings. And then navigate to the detailed plan that are available. Computer making the changes you desire. Right. So with high performance, we don't turn off the hard drives. I think that's what 0 means, right? So 0 means we don't turn off the hard drives. We sleep never. Allow wake timers. display, turn the display off after 15 minutes, right? So if you let it sit idle 15 minutes, it'll go back to the login screen. Right, so you can change those. You just simply click on that, say, okay, I want that to be more like 30 minutes. Okay, we can apply that. Click OK, and now that is, oh, we can go here too, right? So that's the display per the computer sleep lever. So this one will never go to sleep, and we're on high performance. Easy enough. Close that down. Right click on the start menu. Run. Now we're going to go to regedit. Okay, so normally if you're screwing around with regedit, then the first thing you're going to want to do is back up the regedit. Or back up your registry. So you have to do that from the backup. You can do a system backup that will back up the registry. But we're going to run regedit, and this is the database that has all of the information related to how the system is going to operate. Expand the H classes root. So here's H classes root, and we're going to highlight .ac3. And note that you can change, modify, delete values. Double click the default, and they just want us to put in the word audio. Okay, so we're doing something where it's not going to affect anything. Some of these things you can make changes, and your system will just you'll brick your system. So just be real careful if you're playing with registry. That being said, right, we should almost have an assignment where you go out and find really cool registry hacks that you can do on machines, because we can use PowerShell to apply those across machines. And the reason I say that is back before I started teaching, I had an employee, one of my primary help desk folks, and he was really good at registry hacks. He was able to take and use registry to move people from machine to machine and do some other really cool things. So I've seen it be of real benefit, right? If it's something that you can get good at, I think I valued his ability, and he got paid for that ability, and he was able to leverage that skill into making quite a bit of money for the company and himself. However, I do caution you, right? Don't do this on production machines until you get really good at it. So we did something simple. So number 8, really simple. Right click the start menu, click run. So we're going to right click here and click run. What are we doing here? SIG verify. So we're going to do some kind of verification, signature verification, and click start to scan my system for unsigned files. When the scan is completed, click OK and click close. Close the signature verification tool. So the files have been scanned and verified as digitally signed. So everything on our systems are in good shape. We haven't really installed anything custom. We haven't changed anything. We haven't added any software that was not compliant. Right? It's all just Windows, so we should be in good shape there. But be aware that you can run that to see if you have anything weird on your machine that's not supposed to be there. And then the last one, we're on number 10. Right click the start menu, click run, type command. And we're going to run system file checker. So sfc / scan now. All right. So then, based on going through this, I think I'm going to modify the lab. Should actually be performed on just one of your GUI space servers. You pick, right? We're not really doing a whole lot. We're not really changing much. I think going through that 3 times is a little excessive. Right, so made that change right there to the assignment. Hopefully you catch that before you get there. But the assignment is for single machine. Okay, and that's the end of this. We're going to let this scan complete here. Probably take a couple more minutes here to finish that scan. We're at 12%. This is going through and checking all of our system files to make sure that they are valid. We'll see. I want to see the results of this. So I'm going to pause the video, and once it gets to 100%, we will restart the video and finish up real fast and move on to project 2.4. All right. So if you are doing this lab and you're going to wait for the system file check to finish, you should pause the video because this is a good 15-minute process. And then once your system gets done, then you can come back to the video and hit play again. But at this point, verification is 100% complete right here. And we can see that we do not have any integrity violations. There's nothing, none of my Windows files have been altered or out of alignment. Okay, so we're in good shape there. And I believe that is it. Like, that is the end of the lab. So this lab, again, just kind of exploring through some things, some configuration utilities, kind of looking at how the system is set up. Because we're running in virtual, some of our system settings are a tad bit different than what the book is looking for. And finally, do this on one of your servers, not on all three of your GUI servers. Pick a GUI server and do this on one server. I think all I really can look for from as far as snapshots, right? So take a picture of the scan, right? Does the scan working? Maybe the signature verification, the change that you made to regedit, and the last one was the variable, right? So take a snapshot of the variable, snapshot of the regedit, snapshot of signature verification, and snapshot of the results of SFC scan now. Those 4 items, and you are good to go. And at that point, I'm going to end this particular video, and we will start another one for Project 2.4.